I found that the creating of the story, of my story, for the group, not only made me a more effective storyteller to people outside the group uh, and outside in other places, but also, surprisingly, made me more aware of my story. It was a great opportunity for self-reflection. And I thank you all for that very much. Now, as I said, I think I said that I'm an addict. You know, when we started this project a month ago, I thought the story I was going to tell was a story about how older people are addicts, you know, how they can be addicts. On further reflection, I realized that I wasn't telling the true story. That although I'd become aware of my addiction, began to suffer the consequences of my addiction in old age when I was 55, but I'd been living in my addiction all those years. So I guess it's a story of hope, the story of how a person could be addicted his whole life and come out and find recovery. Now, I always begin by making some definitions. Now, an addict is a person whose life has become controlled by drugs. It is a powerful illness, a powerful disease. There's no cure for addiction, but it can be controlled. An addict is a person whose whole life has become controlled by drugs. Now, in the old days, in previous tellings, I would then give a drugography and just share with you how I used drugs for the past 50 years. And some of that was amusing, at least to me, and some of it wasn't. What I've come to understand is that I was telling the story in a wrong way. I was telling the story as if I had control of all of those behaviors. In fact, I won't bother you with a lot of science because I don't have it. But in fact, when I say this addiction is a disease of body, mind, and spirit, I mean exactly that. Just like I have HIV, it can never be cured, but it can be controlled. And just like my HIV, it has effects on my body and on my mind and on my soul. You know, I started using, the idea is, and I don't know how, Bill W. and the early folks at AA said that alcoholism was an allergy. Modern science says this a little differently. There's something to do with the pleasure centers of the brain. But in any case, I got caught and I became an addict. And all through my life, I made decisions and made using easy. When I was very young, I found myself a radical activist, and there was always booze and drugs. When I came into the gay liberation movement, learning to be homosexual meant learning to be in a bar, or learning to be at a demonstration where there's a lot of reefer. When I got older, I found a career and a partner that allowed me to use drugs. When the AIDS crisis came, not only was my using reinforced by drugs and friends because, hey, why not? I was on my way out. And then after the AIDS crisis, when I continued to live, I found more and more that there was no meaning for my life without substances. I tried abstinence a number of times, but it never worked. And so I used and used and used until I was in my mid-50s. At that point, my doctor said I was going to have a heart attack. And he said my immune system wasn't working anymore. And my T cells were going down, up, down, I don't know, okay, and my viral load was going the other way. I was in trouble. But even that didn't make me stop. So demented was I by my addiction. What did make me stop is on the apps, they have little pictures like this of people. You may have seen them. Well, they started talking to me and they started waving to me. And I knew, and I said, I talked to my doctor about this, and he said, well, Tom, those are hallucinations. Wow. That startled me. That was the crisis. I could imagine dying. I could imagine a heart attack. And in fact, I did have a heart event, as they call them now, soon after my recovery. But I didn't want to lose my mind. That was my bottom line, and that's what the crisis that took me into recovery. Now, I made the decision to become recovered while I was still in my addiction. I was still vaguely using. Not the way I had been, but I was still using. And so I chose a rehab center down in Florida. It looked good on the internet, sure as hell did. And it was a recovery center for gay and lesbian people, for queers like me. I thought if I was going to get clean, I might as well get a suntan out. It was a very bad decision. I got there. They took my shoelaces and my belt and my books and escorted me to a locked ward of the heavy psychiatric patients. And that's where I stayed for 4 nights. While I was there, I saw no counselor, no psychiatrist, no social worker. Who I did see was a lady from the accounting department who every day collected me. And we spent hours trying to make sure that Social Security and my insurance would pay for my hospitalization. I say that was the last choice of my addiction, because even when an addict tries to do something right, it often goes wrong. I knew I was an addict. Coming down from methamphetamine addiction is not easy. And so I left Florida with the realization that I really did need help. I got home in a blizzard, and I was as blizzarded out internally as the earth was, or the Chicago streets were when I arrived in town. Quite frankly, I didn't know what I was going to do. I got home and called a friend from the Narcotics Anonymous I knew. He arranged to take me to a meeting the next day, and then I crashed, or I collapsed, or I passed out. The next day, he did take me to my first meeting of Narcotics Anonymous, and that's when my recovery began in earnest. Now, recovery is a process just like addiction is a process. I think what it does, it rewired my brain in the company of other people who are recovering. It's said that the opposite of addiction is connection. But the program of Narcotics Anonymous has given me is an opportunity to be connected with other people who understand my problems and who can help me as I help them get out of my addiction.